Shalom and welcome back. I'd like to ask a question. What is the difference between spiritual and religious? Many people say they are very spiritual, but they're not religious. That means that they don't go to synagogue on Shabbos, they don't put on tefillin or fulfill the laws of Judaism, but they are in touch with their spiritual dynamic. What does that mean? They love animals, they're connected with their soul and the powers of the soul, and perhaps God or a power above us that motivates us, that guides us without it being necessarily God. Anything that is of a higher nature is generally considered spiritual, as opposed to the physical. So physical and spiritual are generally opposites. Opposites. And indeed, that is the case. That if a person is a spiritual person, they tend to be not very materialistic. What is religious? Religious means that a person subscribes to the various laws of Judaism. They keep Shabbos, they keep kosher, they put on tefillin, they light Shabbos candles, but they may not be spiritual. In other words, they may not have a higher purpose to it, a holiness to it. They may not be connected with the innermost mystical aspects of the mitzvahs themselves. They just do it. They do it as rote. They do it because it's given, and that's what they do. They're religious, and very often religious people can be non-spiritual or spiritual. They could be. I know many people who are very religious, but they tend to be more halachic. They tend to be more rational. They're not very spiritual people at all. On the other hand, I've known many spiritual people who are deeply spiritual who are not very religious at all either. So, whatever you are, you may be more spiritual, you may be more religious, and back and forth and so forth. What does Judaism ask for us? Judaism asks for us that we should be observant of the mitzvahs, call it religious or not. We are to be observant of the mitzvahs of the Torah, and we are to have a spiritual connection to those mitzvahs. We call that kavanah. To have a kavanah means to have intent, to understand the meaning of the mitzvahs. When we put on tefillin, we're connecting our heart and our brain, our rationale, and our actions all together. That's why we put one box on our head, it's representing the intellect, one box by the heart on the arm, and the arm represents action. Action, emotions, intellect. That's spiritual. That's a deeply spiritual idea. But it's spiritual in the sense of observing a law from the Torah. Ideally, that's what we should be doing. We should be fulfilling the laws of the Torah, but at the same time, we should be doing it with deep kavana, with deep intent and spirituality. And that's what our forefathers did, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. They were very deeply spiritual people. They were people who talked to God. Nothing more spiritual than that. But at the same time, they fulfilled the mitzvahs even before they were given. We are told that Abraham served his guests matzahs, round cakes of fine flour dough, which was matzah. We are told that Abraham began Shacharis, as it says, V'yashkem Abraham Baboker. He got up early in the morning to offer his son as a sacrifice. They davened Shacharis. Yitzchak Mincha, as it says, Suach Basada, he was meditating in the field when his future bride Rivka pulled over and saw him there. He was davening Mincha, and Yaakov Marav. So they were very spiritual people. And perhaps they lived at a time where Jews were not so quote unquote religious, but they were very deeply spiritual. But at the same time, they did observe mitzvahs and they did follow the laws of the Torah and the rules of the Torah in a very great way as well. So our goal is to be both spiritual and observant to the mitzvahs. One is no good without the other. We should not delude ourselves to think, well, I'm a spiritual person, but I don't have to keep kosher or keep Shabbos. No, keeping kosher and keeping Shabbos makes us more spiritual. We will become more spiritual individuals when we do that. Every morning I get up in the morning, I go to shul and I daven, I pray to God with my talis and my tefillin on, and I say the holy words that Jewish people have been saying for centuries. And some mornings I feel more spiritual than other mornings. but at least I'm spiritual. I feel spiritual. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't feel spiritual at all. So let's give it a try, and let's go into Shabbos with the deep spirituality that it deserves. And I want to wish you all a very good and a beautiful Shabbos. Candlelighting the Shabbos will be at 5:57. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos.